with British author, publicist, lecturer, broadcaster and researcher of unidentified flying objects, Phillip Mantle. Phillip has been extensively writing about the topic of UFOs for many decades, but this conversation has a completely different flavour, as that is, this time we're not talking about unique flying crafts, although of course it does drop into the conversation, but this more is about the future in the form of archiving. How will the extensive records and reports that have been collated over the years be available for the future generations of researchers? What options are there? Who's doing it? Who's storing? And how will they be available? In the era of reports effectively being lost in the vastness of social media, there is a potential for a vast loss of incredible volumes of important information and details, which ties in also neatly with great weight to our next episode of Our Curious World, where I explore a conversation with Calvin Parker, where lost archival information returning to the surface becomes the centerpiece of a new released book, written of a close encounter in Pascagoula, Mississippi, in what is perhaps one of the most important documented encounters. Stay with Our Curious World as we explore fascinating conversations. This is Phillip Mantle.
See, my mum was, believed in the Bible verbatim. I didn't, but she did. So again, maybe it stemmed from that. I don't know, but it was why people believed in certain things, and why they believed in the paranormal, because it was a belief. For them, this was a belief system. But mine was from a different perspective, and it still fascinates me now. I'm not religious at all, but I am fascinated by religion and why people believe certain things, or ultimately, of course, why they disbelieve as well. And I think you can transfer that into the realms of the paranormal and ufology, because a lot of it is based, with the greatest of respect, on belief.
Yeah, very personal experiences, isn't it? Where how people they can perceive that what the same experience in different ways, depending on who saw it and who experienced it. I guess if you were to have a mystical being enter the bedroom, if you're a Christian or Catholic, you might perceive that as being an angel. If you are someone who has a modern science fiction appearance, you might go, I've recognised this out of them science fiction books. This is an alien. Mm-hmm. So I guess that the perception is very different, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's around the world. I mean, If you look at the phenomena, in the UK, we've had all kinds of creatures reported. America, it's the little grey guys. In the Soviet Union, it's big, tall beings. In Italy, it's a whole raft of things. So it is belief-driven without a shadow of a doubt.
You say Italy there, and I was looking on your website earlier about some of the books that you've published through your publishing house, and I saw you've got UFO contacts in Italy. I mean, what got you? What brought you to that subject in Italy? Is that an author that came to you? Because I was interested how that works with you.
Well, what it was, I mean, when I set up Flying Disc Press, it more or less happened by accident. As you mentioned in the introduction, I used to edit a couple of magazines, and I've got contacts here, there, and everywhere. Well, a friend of mine called Peter, I'll try and pronounce this, not easy for a Yorkshireman, but his surname is Chielebias, and he sent me a manuscript, a book manuscript, not for publication, but Peter was wanting to practice his written English, so he asked if I would read it for him and give him some feedback. So I did, and I thought, well, this would make a good book. So I asked him if he'd like to publish it, and that's how it started, quite by chance. But what I wanted to do, wherever possible, and if possible, was to publish information that wasn't necessarily always available in English.
Sure.
Certainly Peter's work wasn't. I followed that up with a UFOs over Romania from Dan Farkas, and again, much of that had never been published in English. And the same with UFO contacts in Italy. I know the author, Roberto Panotti. I've met him several times. I've lectured for him at his events, and I knew his English was pretty good. So, that followed on. With Panotti, he's got so much information. That is volume 1. There will be a volume 2 to follow. So, I've tried wherever possible to obtain information that's either not been published in English before, or if it has, it's not been widely available, and things like that. So I'm trying to continue down that line.
Yeah, because you look at some of the UFO stories, that it's often it's the same trodden stories like Rendlesham and I guess, and Roswell, they're just so treaded over now. It's like, well, perhaps there's not much new coming to them. So I guess to bring in subjects and topics and encounters from other cultures, what we'd never have seen or read before, that's a fantastic opportunity to find even more cross examination between the accounts.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, when we're talking about trying to study this subject, we've got pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, but we haven't got them all. One of the reasons we haven't got them all is because of the language barrier.
Yeah.
So, it's my own small way of trying to help with that.
Yeah.
I've also published things that have been published before, but in limited amounts. For example, one of the conferences we did, we had some information published, all the papers. I mean, I think, originally we printed about 200 copies. But when I reread it, there's some fascinating information in there. So I republished it and made it available. I republished the book UFO Contact at Pascagoula. Originally, there was only 2,000 copies printed. And it's a fascinating account. And I assumed all 2,000 copies had been sold, because you get a few, turn up on eBay and places like that. I've recently discovered that a TV producer pretty much bought them all.
Oh, really?
And still has them boxed up brand new.
That's an interesting thing. Do you think he was trying to keep them from public?
Well, he's now thinking about a new documentary, but he's looking to raise the funds, and as part of it, if you donate, I don't know, $25, you will get a copy of the original hardback, which at the moment you'll be lucky if you can get one for under 60 or 70 pounds.
Wow. So
but you'll get one in mint condition. Now, whether he continues with it, I don't know. But what I did find is the Pascagoula incident goes back to 1973. It involved two gentlemen, Charles Parker, who was 42, and Calvin Hickson, who was 19. Charles is now dead, The other young man, Calvin Parker, he rarely spoke about what happened in public. Well, I've managed to track him down. He's now in his 60s, and he's willing to. He's at that stage in his life, Kristian, where he wants to tell all now.
Yeah.
He's got family. He wants to, and we're hoping to write a book, or he's hoping to write a book. We started it anyway. But he said, there's much more to his side of the story than's ever been told. So that came around quite by chance. So if we can manage to do that, then hey presto, it's some new information about an old classic case. So
that's right. Yes, it's bound to reignite the senses and invigorate the story again to more people who've never read even the original story. I guess they wanted to find out even more about it. So I mean, I might sound crazy, I might sound nothing. I haven't been in contact with Beowulf for quite some time in MUFON. I know that of course you were part of them, and I guess you're still quite revered with them. How is the kind of the volunteer side of Beowulf these days? Do you know?
Well, in the UK, Beowulf it's very limited now. When I left, there was like 1,000 members. You could join it. I don't think they have any membership now. There's just still a small band that soldier on. I was part of MUFON for a while in the States. They seem to have stabilized. They went downhill like most UFO groups did. I mean, when I first started, Kristian, there was little UFO groups dotted around the country, and you could buy their newsletters and things like that off them. I mean, it was exciting to get this handmade newsletter come through your door.
Yeah.
Jenny Randall's, for example, did her own Northern UFO News for many years, probably for decades, and but that most of them have gone. I only know of a handful of local UFO groups now. MUFON have been an international organization. Again, when the digital age came, they suffered, but they've managed to stabilize themselves, and they're still ongoing and seem to have a good base of volunteers. So, on one hand, it's gone downhill. On the other hand, it's not so bad because, things have changed and we have to change with it.
Yeah, I guess social media has transformed that, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's why I started talking about, archives.
Yes.
Because everything's digital now, but when I started, there was no such thing. It was paper, phone, fax. Right. I remember the former head of MUFON, many years ago was a chap called Walter Andrus.
Yes.
And at Walt, he came over here to speak at one of our conferences, and one of the remarks he made was, he says, Philip writes to me quicker than I can answer. Well, we don't have that problem now, do we? Instantaneous email backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And Skype, So things have certainly changed.
Yeah, the speed of how communication works now, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we've literally have seen it in maybe one generation. It from being like faxes, even that was like a very scary prospect that you could write on something and send it as a letter to somewhere else in the world, and that was only like 20 years ago. And now we have instantaneous, virtually free communication all around the world. It's crazy how fast technology has overtaken perhaps our own biology, our own evolution of how we understand the world. It really has taken our lives by storm, and I think we're still playing catch up on quite a few other things. So, I mean, I guess really where I wanted to go was what you just brought up there is cataloguing, archiving, and for the future, really, for future research. And the reason that, again, I saw your the thread quite some time ago, I think it was around November, where you put, my health is not in a great position. What I wanted to talk about is what's the future looking? How can we put things in storage? How can things be accessed in the future? And I think the conversation went along the lines of, can it be digitalized? And I was like, I can remember you coming back and saying, well, I'd love to, but potentially there's 14,000 documents over there. They're going to have to be hand scanned in and obviously and archived up. I mean, so how much work do you think would be involved in digitizing the libraries of what we have in terms of paperwork?
Oh, I've had one drawer of my filing cabinet digitized, and that took. It was volunteers that did it, and I'm Steve Meara, and I'm ever grateful for him. And this was just my file of my research on the alien autopsy film. It took them months, and I mean months. And they come and picked it up and delivered it again. But it took an awful long time. But when I was talking about my files, I was also sort of generalizing as well, Kristian, about people of my era. I know, for example, my friend and colleague John Hanson down in the Midlands. John has, set himself a task of not only publishing a great series of books called Haunted Skies, but trying to save and salvage stuff and stop it going in the bin.
Yeah.
But again, and he's done a great job. But again, John's accumulated all these paper files, and with the greatest respect, like me, we're not going to live forever. So where is all that going to go? I mean, I've said, John, if I snuff it, you can have mine, but you're still left with the same problem. What happens when John passes away? So we've looked to say, is there an institute, a university, not something that's privately funded, Kristian? Well, let's say I've got a pocket load of cash and say, right, I'll fund it. But what happens when the funding runs out? So we were looking and thinking, is there a university, not only that will store it and keep it, but will also, file it in some kind of order, digitize it and make it publicly available.
That's right.
Not go in and take away, but if you're researching a particular incident, right, I'll go to that archive. And I thought, would the National Archives take it? No, they only take government documents. So that was crossed off the list. My local library is barely, struggling to stay open. So I don't think they'd have it. And I've got books. I've got even 3.5-inch floppy disks with stuff on, So, and I've got, I literally have an old metal filing cabinet that is stuffed full of stuff. Then the others goes into boxes. So I've given all my magazines away. John's got those because I literally had nowhere to put them. They were in the garage, and I was worried that if we have a leak, they would be ruined. I'd kept them in very good order. I'm glad to say. So they've already gone. I don't know how many books I've got. I've got quite a few, and then I've got memorabilia. I've got UFO models. I've got a full-size alien. I've got all kinds of stuff that the kids have bought me down the years, but I've bought myself. I'm a collector as well. So it's part of the social history of the subject. So, as a job lot, you can digitize the files, but you can't digitize all of it.
No,
So,
when you say it's like a social archive,
a friend of mine, John, in the States, sadly, he's no longer with us. But he was a lot older than me, and he'd been collecting since the 1950s. I stayed at his house in North Carolina, and I stuck my head up through the hole into his attic, and it was just ram-packed. And he got to the stage where he was ill, and he thought, well, what am I going to do with it all? But he was lucky. He managed to donate his to the UFO Museum at Roswell. So George's material is all stored at Roswell, but we haven't got the equivalent here, have we?
No, we really don't, no.
So it's a dilemma. And like I say, when I joined the Yorkshire UFO Society, it was started by Birdsall Brothers. Graham went on to have great success. You see, when Graham died all of a sudden, completely out of the blue. Pretty much all of his material ended up in a skip.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it?
It's a great shame. So, John Anson's got a marvellous archive of stuff that is recovered. But what's going to happen when John goes? Where's it all going to end up? I don't know the answer, Kristian. I really don't. I mean, I've got two wonderful daughters who are not interested in the least.
Wow.
So it's all right saying, oh, my mate's interested, I'll give it to him. But then, when your mate dies, what happens? You still face that same dilemma.
Yeah, the cold face still happens, doesn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
The one thing that did resonate in terms of a subject was, have you heard of Doreen Valiente? She was a kind of communal hobbyist, effectively, for the pagan literature in the 1960s. She accumulated lots of documents and lots of occult material from all around the world. She inherited most of Crowley's collection, for instance. And she was kind of faced with the same problem in like the 1980s. And so she taught her a druid, effectively, who was a person called John Bellum Payne, is a person that I interviewed about a couple of years ago. And so what happened to all that archive material of Crowley, of Doreen Valiente, they created a trust between like a number of people. And I thought, because as that was happening was when I saw your conversation, I was like, the similarity here is quite comparable. Is it possible that a trust could be created for a large collection of the UFO material that is out there right now, such as like archival reports and books and documents and so on? Is a trust perhaps the way to go?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have the answer, because there is what's called the Archives for UFO Research in Sweden, run by Claes Spahn. And Claes, and his colleagues, have done a great job of preserving and digitizing material. Two problems with it. One, it's in Sweden.
Yeah.
With the greatest respect, I mean, I've told Claes this. Claes has been here in my house, so I do know him personally. And again, it's privately funded. So once the funding runs out, it's in a building, it's publicly accessible, and they sell duplicates of any books they get and things like that, to try and supplement their income. But ultimately, when the funds run out, what happens? So that's the problem with anything, whether it's a trust or something. We really should be looking at a university or or something of that nature that's highly unlikely that it will bite the dust. And I'll give you an example of the kind of material that is still out there that we also don't know about, Kristian. I've been in communication recently with a chap called Rob Mercer in the States. And Rob's a UFO researcher, and he likes to collect government documents. And he saw on a social media site some documents, allegedly, from Project Blue Book.
Oh, right, okay.
That was supposedly the genuine article. He was a bit suspicious, but for $100, he thought, I'll take a risk. So he bought them, and hey presto, they are from Project Blue Book, a lot of which have never seen the light of day before.
Wow.
So he managed to trace back where they originally came from, and he found the captain who worked on Project Blue Book, still alive. These have been in his ex-wife's garage, and she got rid of them. And lo and behold, he still had another 4 boxes. Still
Oh,
sat
incredible.
there, you know. So this is the kind of stuff out there. There might not be any smoking guns in them, but it's part of ufological history.
It certainly is. That's
So
most
I remember
important.
many years back, Bufora used to have some active researchers over in Halifax in West Yorkshire called Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. They hadn't been involved for quite a while, and this is before the digital age. I got a letter from them completely out of the blue, saying, Philip, we're moving, we're no longer interested. They believe UFOs were demonic. They'd now found God, so we wanted to get rid of all our stuff. If you don't come and get it, it's going in the bin. Literally going in the bin. So I phoned them up and went and retrieved it, thankfully. You know, and I found other collections of UFO archives, you know, stuck, you know, in somebody's kitchen on the floor, not wanted, you know, just looking to get rid of it. So, you know, those are examples, like I said, with Graham's material, Graham Birdsall, it pretty much all went in the bin. And you know, that is a crying shame, it really is. And how many more times, Kristian, has that happened in the UFO world, and for paranormal researchers as well?
It is. I mean, it was one issue I kind of came across quite early, actually. When I kind of started seriously looking at the supernatural and the paranormal and the unexplained, it was like 2006, 2007. When a number of people got together with a group, so I started being independent, as it were. I started working with a group and a bit more largely organised. And so we were going out investigations quite naively at the time. And I was like, but so what happens? Is there a master file that we are creating? And that's the first kind of thought to myself, well, we need to, all your photographs and all your documents and interviews, and I've got all mine over here. So what do we do with them? Are you going to keep your own and I'm going to keep mine, or are we going to put them together and make a master file of everything we do and investigate? And it all became quite political. It was quite strange. And it was a bit messy about who managed the material, who had it, so who could copy it to a file or a document or a disk or whatever on a hard drive, and it became really messy. And I guess coming away from that, I kind of wanted to, if I'm going to research this topic properly, I need to archive it formally, because not only do you have to like tag it, if you want to scan a document, for instance, not only have you got to know what the document is, where it's come from, who made it, who wrote it, who's the contributors and the authors and so on, you've then got to meta tag it as well with all the different keywords that are a part of it, so it's findable later on, should you want to go and find it in your own archives. And that also takes a considerable amount of time on each document, let alone on each photograph, let alone like the vast archives that are out there. So I kind of, after that point, from about 2010, 2011, I kind of took a step back from actually being actively involved in researching, just because I guess I didn't want to deal with that much pressure, and I started becoming more of a contributor to things like I was like anthropology, but it's like the being a contributor as opposed to being the one who actually is doing all the research. I wanted to help other groups and help other people. Like, this is how we can do this. This is a way we can organise. This is a way that we can formalise our data, and that became very successful. So I managed to get quite a few of the groups in Nottingham, my surrounding area, and the East Village to kind of contribute their data all together in terms of reports and archive data. But in terms of the future, I don't know, like you said, what's going to happen down the line. Will it all go in the bin? Will it all get disappeared if a hard drive fails? Or is the original documents going to be thrown away and just discarded as being, oh, I only did that 20 years ago, I don't do that anymore, it's not worth keeping?
Exactly. I mean, one of the criticisms you see constantly receive at Bufora, I mean, Bufora have been going since the 1950s.
That's it.
And it's okay. I mean, you know, we couldn't get access to their files because they had an embarrassment of riches. They were all paper files. And nobody quite knew where they were, who stored them, what condition they were in. And the same happened with the Flying Saucer Review, of course, magazine that, you know, went on for decades. I believe that, again, the archives for UFO research have been scanning them, may have finished, but getting access is the same problem. So, you know, we're looking, I'll repeat it again, I think really it ought to be some university or some reference library that will not only take them, but we'll treat them with the respect that these documents deserve, and file them and digitize them and make them publicly accessible, either in paper format or digitally as well. And like I say, you can go to the I know it's out of the way, but you can access the library in Roswell at the UFO Museum. Yeah. It's better than nothing. I know it's not in New York, but it's there anyway. It's highly unlikely it's going to bite the dust. It still is a commercial success, but we don't have anything or anywhere in the UK that we can perhaps pester, badger, and say, will you take this material? When I snuff it, can I say to my wife, I'll leave it in my will, I want all my material here donating to the X library or X university or whatever. And it's something that does give me genuine concern. And, because once they're gone, that's it.
That's it. That's it. They're gone.
I've got my filing cabinet. I've got boxes full of files, and even I forget what's in them, Kristian. And I'm writing a new book at the moment, so I've been going through some of my paper files, and I thought, my God, I don't ever remember reading that.
Yeah.
But it's there, and I'm thankful I saved it. So would be interesting for any contributions on this. Anybody else got any ideas anywhere? Or is there any libraries or universities thinking, well, we could do something with that?
Well, I was just thinking about how even the government's own documents, they appear to have, they may have put them all online. I'm sure there might be many more. But they appear to be very much like, well, this is a subject that the people need to, if they have an interest in it, here's the MOD documents from like 1980 to, 1996, whatever it is they put online, 1997. And they made them publicly accessible, but then they've kind of taken their hands off them. So by digitizing them and putting them out in the public, have they got rid of the original documents and the original specimens because they're now digital?
No, the documents are there. You can go to the National Archives and you can actually access them and view them. Dr. David Clark, again, an old friend of mine, he's been responsible for getting the MOD to archive their material. And David did a presentation and you call it a class at the archive just recently, where a number of people were invited in. He did a presentation about the archives, and they were able to sit there with their little cotton gloves on and examine some of the original documents.
Oh,
so they are still there. You can get access to them, but they won't take information and documents from the public. I asked David this, and he said, no, it's only government.
So you can't add to it.
Archive. So, we can't have one that's for public documents, which is a shame, but it would have been perfect, but it's not to be.
No, because I guess in the public it's where the majority of the reports are, isn't it? All the eyewitness experiences, the personal sightings in the sky, for instance, and all the kind of experiences that people have, the ones that have been documented, and it may be that most people have never wrote down their experiences, but for those that have, they will disappear. Unless even now, I think there's another aspect as well, is that even on social media, people might just post their experience online once, and that's it. They'll post it on their Facebook wall, for instance, and that'll be all their experience. They'll never write it anywhere, or they'll never submit it to like the paranormal database or anything like MUFON or before. They'll just post it on their Facebook wall, and then to be left a year later, never to be seen or thought of again.
Well, that's the thing with the digital age. It's a very disposable thing. You can upload it 1 second and download it and delete it the next, and it's pretty much gone forever. You can download the latest track of your favourite singer. I don't like that. Whereas in my day, of course, it was vinyl or cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And then the CDs came along. You could keep that forever. And same with the paper files. I mean, I had to look up just last year because I didn't honestly know. Let's give you an example about the different eras. I didn't know if you could still send a telegram.
Yes, I did know that actually. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by that. I think it was like last December. I was trying to get a message through to someone. I was like, how am I going to message them? They can't get anything. And I searched how to send a message, and actually the first subject that came up on Google was telegramming, a digital telegram. And I was like, oh, somebody.
Yeah, but that's a digital telegram. What about paper one where they used to come around on a little motorbike and knock on your door?
Well,
You know?
has to
It's
still be
gone.
done. Has to still be done.
Yeah. So, it just made you think. Today's digital age. I mean, it is wonderful. Let's not forget that. But it is an instant thing. You can upload something and you can delete it in an instant. So I'm more or less, when I'm talking about my files, the majority, not entirely, because I do keep things digitally, but from when I first started for many years, is all paper. Or I still have, like I said, I've got some 3.5-inch discs. I can't even read them now. I don't have a reader for them. I have a bit of an idea of what's on them, but not totally.
Right.
And that's only because they've got labels on with my writing on, My memory's not that great. But it's not just the files, it's my books, the memorabilia. I mean, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Back in the 1980s, an estate agent from South Africa sent me a brochure about a house that was for sale. And the house was built like a flying saucer. And this brochure's in 3 or 4 different languages with completely photographs and drawings and a map of this thing. And it was a millionaire who'd had his UFO sighting, and he built his house to replicate what he saw, and he was selling up.
All right.
And that is still sat in my files, and I often forget it's there, and then I'll come across it, and it just makes me smile. Why the hell they sent it to me, I don't know, but, it's not online anywhere. It's just there in my files. And what else may be lying there that I've forgotten about? Your guess is as good as mine.
Oh man, that was I can remember going to obviously I live in Nottingham. I went to the city library and I found they had the local studies library where there was a substantial amount of user submitted content and material, and newspaper cuttings and so on. So I was like, I wonder how much unexplained material they've got. And the lady, she brought me out a box, and I was flicking through this box. There was lots of UFO clippings from over the years, and stuff about the hum that's been posted in the paper, and it was stuck to card. It was in there as archive data. And then 20 minutes later, she brought out another 6 boxes, followed by another 4 boxes, and another box. And she's, yeah. I've got all this as well. So I was like, no. So I found this study library. I thought, so the first thing I started to do was write articles about the information that was in these storage boxes, what I was finding. And then I went along to Hucknall Library, which Hucknall was a bit like it's kind of mid-sized town just north of Nottingham, and I found that they've got a local studies library, and I found in there's 3 or 4 boxes of paranormal and an unexplained archive material in there. So I was like, damn, I got untapped resource that I don't think anyone is aware is there. And then as of course our economic situation as a country is happening now, the libraries are closing. So it's like, where is this archive stuff going? Because I'm aware the Hucknall Library has closed, and a lot of that stuff was sent to the Nottingham Library. I've been there, but none of the Hucknall Library boxes are there. So it's but I was told by them that's where they were all sent, but they're not there.
Well, you see, you've answered my question there. If we are to donate this material to an institution, we have to be fairly sure that it's one that's going to be around for a while. And like you say, my local library is just about hanging on. I don't really know how. So I thought maybe the British Library might be an idea, or certain universities might. But whether they would be interested in archiving it and using it accordingly is a different matter. Whether it's just going to get stuck in a cupboard somewhere and forgotten about for decades. It's like David Clarke, again, recently found he was doing a lecture somewhere, and there's an old story of a flying saucer from near Scarborough, way back when in the 50s. And it disappeared. There's supposed to be bits of it here and there. Well, it was in the British Museum. It's stuck in a drawer. Somebody told David if they'd not been at the lecture, he would never have found out. So he found it. It's a fake. It's a hoax. But again, it's been sat there for decades, and nobody knew about it. So if you were to donate your archive to somewhere, is it going to end up being the same? Are they going to stick it in a cupboard somewhere and forget about it? Just close it up, and somebody will stumble on it, in 20 years' time and think, oh, what's that? Oh, well, but that's not good enough. It needs to be archived correctly and digitized and made available to anyone who wants to research it. If there's a small fee or not, that's down to them. But it has to be looked after. Otherwise, we might as well just throw it in the skip. You know.
Yeah. And my
So,
thoughts were going to the.
suggestions, Kristian. I really am. You know, because I haven't been in the best of health. I've had serious health problems for 20 years, and I'm getting to the stage where I'm just about to retire from work, and it's made me think. That's why I'm writing this book. I better get it done. Well, I've got a chance, mate. You know. I'm just thinking, well, you know, yes, I've said, oh, my mate can have this and he can have that, but in reality, it would be nice to know that, you know, it's going to an archive somewhere where it'd be all looked after. Not just me, then the others could follow suit, you know. And I'm sure there'll be some listening to this today and thinking, yeah, I'm in the same predicament, Philip. I've got a filing cabinet full, and I've got boxes of this and boxes of that. Where are they going to go?
Yeah, where are they going to go? So if there's anyone out there listening who has an idea or a suggestion, or perhaps a way that we can collectively do something with all this material, please feel free to drop us a message and offer your suggestion out to Philip, myself, or anyone who's part of it before and so on, and pass the message on and see if we can get something collectively going on together. So switching tracks a little bit, I'm kind of wondering, have you had an experience with an alien or a UFO yourself?
Not any what you call an alien encounter. Seen a couple of odd things, Kristian, down the years. I mean, when I started at the Yorkshire UFO Society, again, I think I was quite fortunate because there were areas in and around the Yorkshire Dales, around the market town of Skipton, that had a lot of UFO sightings that came our way. One particular area is just outside of Skipton. It's called Carlton Moor, above the village of the same name, Carlton. Recommend the Swan, the pub there. It's very nice.
Very good.
But there's, you know, it's sparsely inhabited. They do some grouse shooting there. There's a few farms. There was a casserie. But for whatever reason, these moors in and around the Skipton area had a whole, you know, plethora of sightings come our way. And I was up there one night with Graham. I couldn't drive at that point, so Graham, we hadn't planned to go. He just rang me up and off we went. And one of the vantage points we used to use was looking across Carlton Moor. There are no buildings, no lights, no nothing. You know, we've been there many times at night and in daytime. I don't know what time it is, 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's a little light in the distance. And I says to Graham, what's that? Just a little white light. I don't know, it shouldn't be there. Now, beyond the horizon, there's a little dip in the dale, and there's a little village down there. You can't see it, but it's there.
Right.
So we get in the car. Graham said, "Well, go and take a closer look." Now, Graham used to drive like a maniac. You know, whether it's daylight or in the pitch dark, it really didn't make any difference. So I'm in the passenger seat, and we're literally tearing down this country road. And I don't know if the dry stone wall had fallen down or it was a gate that was open, but at one point I could see right down the valley, and there was just a mass of lights, Kristian. I mean, I'm talking huge, like a big Catherine wheel of coloured lights in the sky, just hung there motionless. And I said to Graham, look at that. And of course, I'd no sooner said it and we'd gone past it. All I could then see was the dry stone walls. And this just made Graham even more angry and drive faster because he hadn't seen it. He'd been concentrating on the road.
Oh,
we drove down through the village, I think it's called Lothersdale, and around the moor, and saw nothing else. So that was one thing. And then in 1984, one July evening, I'm coming home from work about 10 o'clock at night. It was one straight road, just a couple of miles home. And as soon as I got on the main road, nice sunny evening, the sun hadn't quite set. See this light in the distance. So that shouldn't be there. You know, I knew my planets and things like that. So I took off, came to a vantage point about a mile or so down the road where I could pull in. And we lived on a hill, and in the valley is the city of Leeds below us. And to the right is a hill with a suburb of Leeds called Middleton. And there was two lights just hung above the hill. You didn't have to arch your head back, you could see them. They're like a pearly white, one slightly larger than the other, and then they just disappeared. They didn't go up or down, they're just gone. And colleagues going home similar routes the same night saw it, and we had lots of other people from all around the area see the same thing. What they were, I don't know, but those are the only things I can put my fingers on, really.
Because there's an incredible amount of sightings that people make. I guess that some people it's a misidentification of a standard aircraft. Where I live, I've got like a number of air corridors above our house, and I go out quite frequently, and I remark at how often I can see things that would resemble flying rods at the site because of the perception. Or you don't see the wing because it's in shadow, or it's at an angle where you don't see the wing at all. So what you have is like a centimeter or a 4-finger nail width rod in the sky, and I kind of wonder how often that's been misreported.
I mean, lots of times. I mean, what we used to do with new members of the Yorkshire UFO Society, we would take them out onto the moors, simply because of the light pollution. We could see the night sky, and we would point out things to them that there were, satellites, the planet Venus, and so on. And these are the things that will get reported to you, and you must be able to identify them. Yeah. But we did that on a sort of semi-regular basis, and it was very useful for new. I mean, I've had everything you can think of reported to me at one point or another, most of which can be explained. We know that. Most people do it in all sincerity. Same with the paranormal things.
Yeah, because their experiences are a very genuine experience. They saw what they saw, and that's how they interpreted it. Absolutely.
But we're still left with a little residue of things that, no matter how skeptical you want to be or how much investigation you do, still leave you scratching your head, Kristian.
Yes.
And I'll argue that till I'm blue in the face. I know skeptics and all that, and but for me, there are still things that I'm not saying they're alien or anything like that. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, we can't find a rational explanation for them.
Yeah.
And I've come across, quite a few, and no matter how long you're involved, there's always something new that will drop in your inbox, one way or another, and think, oh, hellfire, just when you thought you'd heard everything. I never heard this before, and I'm sure you'll have exactly the same kind of thing. So there's always something that you never cease to learn about this subject. There's always something new that crops up somewhere along the line. Usually when it's most unexpected.
Of the unexplained.
Absolutely. I mean, I keep a passing interest in all things paranormal. But I can't say I know it in depth. I'd be lying if I said I did. I have a working knowledge, if you like, and no more than that. But I'll give you one example that still keeps me interested, because it's a personal thing. My ex-wife, you might say she was a little bit psychic.
Okay.
Many years back, and I won't give any names away because it'd be wrong, but we were invited to one of the major newspapers in the UK, to their head office in London, by the assistant editor. And this is, again, pre-digital age, so no email, no internet. And they wanted me to write a feature for the newspaper about UFOs. So we drove down to London, got to their HQ, went through security, given a badge, and this gentleman's secretary came down and collected us, took us up to his office. He wasn't there. He says, I'll be with you in a minute. She got us a cup of coffee, and he appeared. Nice guy, a lovely guy. I'm still in touch with him today. And he said, have you had lunch? We said, no, we've just, literally just arrived. So he took us up upstairs. We had lunch. He was the assistant editor. I think there was the features editor and the photographic editor. There was 3 or 4 other guys sat around with us, and we're chatting away about what we're going to put in the feature and what photographs we can use and so on. And then my wife, all of a sudden, out of the blue, she says to this gentleman, she says, do you know somebody called Josh? And he kind of stumbled with his food and blah, 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 and changed the subject. So we finished lunch, back down to his office, and he came in and he says, who were you talking to about me? Who have you been talking to? Well, nobody. And he said, well, how do you know the name Josh? So my wife says, well, I'm just sat there eating my lunch, and I looked up at you and I could just see the word Josh right across your forehead. And he started crying. And he said, well, Josh was a name I used for an old girlfriend of mine who died many years ago. But that wasn't her name. Her name wasn't even remotely like that.
It was a placeholder name, yeah.
Tears. It got into tears. And, you know, I got the assignment as well. And I've kept in touch with him down the decades. Now, I have no explanation for that. You know, my wife was interested in the paranormal, but no more than that, you know. And I said to her, well, she said, I don't know, it just happened. And that is it. You know, I was an eyewitness to that. And I have no explanation for it whatsoever. So that keeps me interested, if nothing else, Kristian. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. Every day I kind of see a new strange report pop up in the press or in the news, and I find sometimes I have to kind of go, there's almost too many to keep track of, so it's like, well, maybe I should keep to my own little portion and just watch out at the rest, and I guess that's what you've done as well. Because there's so much happening now. I guess, again, with social media, with the media the way it is, 24-hour news cycle, everything pops up all the time, and it can get a bit overwhelming in some regard. So, but no, it's interesting that way that there is so much out there that we can talk about and what's happening around the world. And I guess there's a bit of a renewed interest right now in the subject of aliens. I mean, I guess that X-Files now in its last season, people are talking about having abduction phenomena again. I was like, I haven't heard this for a while, and I was just two colleagues at work just happened to just say that to me again. When I was a child, I think I might have been abducted, and then so we're chatting, and she's like, my sister says the same thing, and it's like, okay.
Well, it's just, you know, my first book was about alien abductions in the UK. And I wrote it with a journalist friend of mine, Carl Negator, so we called it Without Consent. And we published it originally in 1994. To begin with, it started off as a TV documentary. We were hired to consult on it, but it never made it. It got cancelled. So we changed it into a book. I mean, I literally, you know, drove from one end of the country to the other, interviewing people, you know, in person, wherever I could. Again, no internet, so you did it on the phone, in writing, or in person.
Yeah.
I went from the south coast to Scotland to Wales. The only place I didn't go to was Ireland, and that was only because I couldn't find anybody to talk to. You know, but you know, I investigated many accounts of what we call alien abduction. And it's a peculiar phenomenon. It really is, Kristian, because these people are, certainly the ones I met, or most of them, are the genuine article. But more often than not, they're as baffled as we are.
Yeah.
What I did, although we didn't publish it, we did a little sort of poll after we wrote the book. And we asked a handful of these people, what do you think happened to you? Was it alien? And some said, yeah, definitely aliens. Some said, no, this was a spiritual experience. Others said, I haven't got a clue. One young lad said, no, I think it was the Russians. He didn't really. It was his way of rationalizing it. This had terrified him, and the Russians were the bad guys in those days, so I'll blame them. You know, I can deal with it then.
Yeah.
But the overlying thing was that even the abductees themselves didn't have one particular opinion. You know, they were all different. And so, like I said, when you said, well, how did you get into this? It was about people's beliefs. I was really asking them what they believed. They couldn't prove it one way or another. This was what they believed had happened to them. So whilst we do call them alien abductions, it's got that, you know, that word attached to it. Some of the people that have these experiences didn't necessarily agree with that. But it is a fascinating aspect of the subject, I must say. It really is. And whilst it's perhaps back in vogue now because of you know, the X-Files TV program, it's never really gone away.
No, it hasn't.
No. It's just reported differently now. But you know, that's the way it is.
So there was a large. I guess the X-Files is a really good in vogue topic to put it on, because during the mid-90s, of course, that's when ufology just took up to the stratosphere with the amount of reports that was coming out, groups that were being set up. I mean, Steve Parsons of ASAP, he was telling me that at one time he was actually tracking more than 2,000 groups in the UK who were investigating strange and unusual phenomena. He says that was just incredible. He says now you're looking at about maybe 40.
Exactly. I mean, what the X-Files did, it brought the paranormal into everybody's living room.
Yeah,
And the writers of it kept their fingers on the pulse as well, of course.
they did.
So they reacted to things that were reported in the press. For example, you mentioned my book on the alien autopsy. That was featured in the X-Files, not my book, but the alien autopsy. It was, and it made it onto The Simpsons and Seinfeld, and so. But the writers of the X-Files, and still do, they still keep their fingers on the pulse of what's happening, and they integrate it accordingly. So, and then it gets fed into your front room, of course.
That's right. The zeitgeist of the day, it feeds and it shares itself out. I mean, do you think? Okay, it's a hypothetical question. Do you think aliens have come across the skies to our little blue planet, our little blue marble?
I often say that when I first started, I had no doubt, Kristian, that UFOs equaled aliens. I had no doubt whatsoever. But I didn't know an awful lot then. I was, green around the ears. After 40 years of involvement, my opinions have gone up and down the years. And whilst I wouldn't totally rule the alien hypotheses out, it's probably, if I were to make a list, it wouldn't be at the top of the list. But then again, when I published Dan Farkas's book from Romania, it's basically a potted history of all UFO accounts in Romania. The last chapter deals with Dan's own thesis, if you like. He is a PhD on what the phenomena is, and he talks about hyper civilizations. He believes it is an alien phenomena. But these beings are not thousands of years in advance of us, but maybe millions.
Right.
And that is why we as a species are simply not capable of understanding what they are. He said, for example, you get a flat screen television set and stick it on an ant's nest, and they'll know it's there and they'll crawl all over it, but they'll never, ever be able to understand it, So he gives that as an idea, and it made me think. I thought, well, I'm not saying he's right, I'm not saying he's wrong. It just made me think again. Like we were saying, when you think you've heard everything, there's something new that comes up. So I think I've persuaded Dan to write a follow-up, which will be only about his thesis, and his examples of why. Because if you look at it, let's look at the alien hypotheses. First off, how do they find us? The universe is, I think, far larger than any of us can imagine.
Yeah, that's an infinite number
we've only been electrically active with radio waves for just over 100 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably in another 100 years we'll be gone. We won't use radio waves at all. So our signals haven't got that far out into the universe anyway.
And then, of course, if they've received them, then they've still got to travel to get here.
Exactly. So A is how to find us, and then how do they get here? And then when they get here, what do they do? And if you look at a lot of alien encounters, basically, and I've investigated some of these myself, basically what they do is they just bugger about. They don't do anything really.
What's it? It looks like
the odd things.
Scout missions, effectively. If you looked at something like that, the 50s and 60s reports, they seem to be coming down here, like you said, pottering around, looking around fields, taking soil samples, occasional people, and then putting them back, maybe taking the occasional cow and dropping them from a great height. And then there appear to be much more invasive procedures. And then there appear to be not many, in my perception, I didn't see as many for a little period after that. So perhaps if there were scientists like we have, they would observe, they would investigate, they would examine, and then would kind of leave to us they would watch and see how we interacted with us from a social, psychological point of view. Then maybe you might just keep coming by every so often.
Could well be. But then, when they do get here, they look pretty much like us. They've got 2 arms, 2 legs and a head. Oh, but then hold on a minute. No, they don't. There's at least a dozen different types of aliens that have been observed, if not more. So not only is one race coming, there's several races coming. So I talked to one lad about this, and he's a firm believer. He said, "Oh, perhaps there's an intergalactic, internet, Philip." I think, well, come on. But I wouldn't totally rule it out. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Although I would say it's highly unlikely, in my humble opinion. But then I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong. But some of the landing accounts that I've come across, would they come all that way to just take a couple of bits of grass and then bugger off again?
Yeah, you kind of wonder.
Going to the moon, we went to the moon and took a few rocks and some soil, and that was it. Not only that, Kristian, when you look at ufology, not individually, not any one particular case, but if you look at it from when it first started in the modern era anyway, right the way through now, you can see how it's evolved.
Yeah, there is certainly a pattern of evolution to how it...
Yeah, well, it started off with Kenneth Arnold and simple things. Of course, Kenneth Arnold never saw a flying saucer. It wasn't saucer-shaped. Then in the 50s, we had the Space Brothers, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, here to save the world. They lived on the dark side of the moon. And of course, when we sent a probe around the moon, there was nothing there. Oh, well, they don't really live there, they live on Venus.
Yeah.
But they can't live on Venus because it's such a hostile... Oh, well, they don't really live there. It's Pluto, or no, can't live on Pluto. Well, it's to the Tickline. So as our science expanded, the aliens got further and further away, And then they changed, and of course in the in the 60s, excuse me, with Betty and Barney Hill, with the little bug-eyed guys, and so on.
And then Star Trek came along, and then...
Yeah. So it's evolved as it's gone along, which a lot of people don't realise because they've not been involved that long or haven't taken the time to have a look. So these are my arguments to say that it's not impossible, but it's unlikely that the nuts and bolts alien hypothesis, as many people would have us believe, is in fact the correct answer. I'll give you an example. I spoke to one abductee. He's well known. He's called John Day. I had an encounter with his wife and children in the car in Aveley in Essex back in the late 70s. And I went and interviewed John many years later. And not only did he tell me what had happened to them, I said, "Okay, John, what do you think lies behind the phenomenon? You've had this experience, you're an intelligent fella." And he said, "Well," and he said this to me, and it is, I found it quite profound. He said, "Philip, not only can I not explain it to you, we as a species can't explain. But I'll try and do it in the best way that I can." He says, "If you and I went to a film set, a movie set, where they're making the latest James Bond film, you could go on that set, you could touch it, feel it, smell it, you could knock on it, and it would make a noise. But so when you look round the back of it, it's all an illusion." And he left it at that. "I'll make of it what you will." And then a few years after that, I hosted author and abductee Whitley Strieber at a conference I organised in London. Well, there was a Q&A at the end, and somebody asked Whitley a question. And he's basically asking him, what lies behind this. And he said, all I can say is we're learning to ask better questions. And he left that there. And I spoke to him recently on his own radio show, and I reminded him of that. I don't think he remembers saying it, but I did. So he said, we're learning to ask better questions. And I think, that is, spot on. So the more we learn, the better questions we learn to ask.
Yes.
And so probably, if I'm honest, the jury's probably still out, although a lot of people out there will disagree with me. There are many ideas and hypotheses to try and explain the phenomena, but we can't prove any of them one way or the other. We can only, and they won't, some of them won't admit this, but we can only believe. We believe it's this, that, or the other, and I'm no different.
Sure. So I guess our own military tech appears to be a little bit more advanced than our current public tech, shall we say? Because technology has always worked that way. It tends to have a military application or military development, and then from a filter of that, it then becomes like a consumer product much later on. So to know that we have tech that is much more advanced than we have now, or fiber optics and camouflage as the way that they were seen back in the 90s, and the stealth bomber and so on. That technology, it's now public, relatively public, and we all know about it, but what they must be working on behind closed doors is probably much more advanced ahead of that. So it'd be interesting to know if that's been some of the things we've been seeing in the sky over the last 50, 60 years.
Well, we know it is. I mean, for example, the CIA, and people will say, "Oh, you can't believe it," but what they did when they had the spy planes flying around, they put out false UFO stories.
Yes.
And what people were actually seeing was the spy plane, but they purposely seeded that with disinformation. Part and parcel of it.
Yeah.
And there's a CIA memo. I believe it's the CIA. People may correct me. And it's a genuine article where it says, they openly discussed whether they can use UFO sighting for psychological warfare purposes. As simple as that. And saying that the U2 is a flying saucer is psychological warfare.
Yeah.
So, who knows, mate? Who knows? Maybe you and me will get an invitation to Area 51 and they'll reveal all to us.
Who knows, maybe. I think the fact that everyone knows it's there, it's kind of the world's most public secret base, but then you think about, well, that's the most public one. What's there? I'm sure they've got an equivalent which is a bit more hidden in the mountains somewhere.
Well, that wouldn't surprise us, would it? It wouldn't surprise. Certainly in the United States. Much more difficult here on our tiny island, but it would never surprise us.
Yeah, because that's the one thing. Because I guess for a lot of time, I can remember a lot of the accounts were British, were English, and I guess that's because that's based here. Then America became more of a hotbed of it, and I guess America has much more open spaces where you can test and play around and do such things. As for England, it's kind of like, well, you can't really go up in the sky without being seen by at least 3 towns, and go, well, that's a lot of people watching. So it kind of limits research and ability in that regard. And what was that place? Well, you hear about like the Bentwaters and so on Woodbridge back in the day. I mean, even that, it's a relatively open public space. You could still see from quite a few miles away those things potentially in the sky.
Well, yeah, it was just an airbase.
Yeah.
And the only difference was it had, atomic bombs there.
Yeah.
You have to remember at the same time, another airbase became famous, Greenham Common, because of the encampment there. The CND supporters camped outside of it. You couldn't hide it.
No.
And I think, if memory serves me correct, I think the furthest in Britain that you can actually get away from human habitation is about 18 miles. So no matter where you are, there's something, or some dwelling or a person within 18 miles of you. Well, if you go out to America, that's quite different. And then if you expand it even further, if you went to Canada and Russia and Australia, for example, look at Australia, there's nobody, in comparison, there's nobody lives there.
No, everyone lives on the coast.
Yeah. So it would never surprise us. I mean, for example, people say, oh, they can't keep a secret and all this. They can, because at the end of last year, film was released via the New York Times that the Department of Defense had a secret UFO study been going for a number of years, and they spent $20-odd million on it. Yeah. And they released a couple of films that were part of it, and nobody knew about it. So that is still rumbling on. Robert Bigelow, the zillionaire, is part and parcel of it, and it is alleged that there's more to come, so we'll have to wait and see. But the point is, it was a secret. Nobody knew what was going on.
I think the most famous topic, of course, is the one of disclosure in the future. I'm not sure disclosure can exist or should exist in many ways, because I guess if you look at, say, what would be acceptable to the public, I guess like you just said, they released these documents. Is that what people would say is disclosure, or will people only be satisfied when they go, yeah, there's definitely aliens, here they are, this is Bob, he's a green-eyed bug alien from the planet Zenus, and here we are. And then,
but we're assuming, of course, aliens. And I give you an example. Just in the last few days, there's an organisation, UFO group, says we are now closing because disclosure has happened. And that was the article that was released in the New York Times. It wasn't he said, she said. It was backed up with facts and information by the people that were involved. You know, the Department of Defense hasn't denied it. They have confirmed that this did happen. And these were official, you know, military films of an unidentified flying object with, you know, the pilots talking about it at the same time, you know. So this UFO organization in France had said, right, we're going to close. Our job is done. Disclosure has happened. We're not saying these are alien, but disclosure has happened. You know, these are UFOs. End of story. They now go away and figure out what they are and where they come from or who makes them. But that is disclosure. Others say, don't believe these buggers. They'll tell you anything. This is disinformation. That's all rubbish. That was made in a studio. You know, this is misdirection. What's really happening is over there. So, you know, you can't win. You really can't.
That old chestnut's misdirection. It's not real.
Yeah. And like I say, I did a podcast the other night. I happened to mention NASA, and it was, don't believe anything NASA said. I said, well, what about the Russian space program? Don't know them either. What about the Chinese space? I said, well, India's just sent a satellite up. Oh, you can't believe them. You know, it's their own beliefs. You know, you can only believe them and nobody else. So when you talk about disclosure, again, I've been involved for 40 years. There are others that's been involved longer than me. But this thing of disclosure seems to come round, I don't know, Kristian, every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, it's pretty frequent, isn't it?
It's going to happen. It's coming. I mean, not that long ago, it was called Operation Right to Know. And they were literally marching outside the White House with placards, you know, tell us the truth about UFOs and, you know, the truth is coming, Phillip, and so on. They've had congressional hearings and it's not coming. It's not there unless what was released at the end of last year, that hit, you know, you want to class that as disclosure. It certainly made me think, it really did. We got a tip that something was coming, but we didn't know what, and this was only just before it was released.
Do you think the fear would be is that if you were to disclose that, so it's in terms of how, sadly, how Britain and America operate, they kind of keep the public at a bit of a distance. You know that certain, they want certain information out there. They only want a certain perspective, a bit of a theatre going on. If they were to reveal that the UFOs that they're encountering are not human, shall we say, does that then say, well, the government no longer has control because we can't control the airspace, we can't protect you? Is it therefore that is there a danger if they admit that UFOs are genuinely not of Earth? You know, what does that say to your public? And then therefore you don't have the kind of a public consensus of a democracy because everyone's going to be running around in kind of a riot.
I think our own government has done that. They've said that, you know, they've no proof that UFOs are extraterrestrial, but they don't deny that some accounts are unidentified. But what they then follow is that they are of no threat to the UK defence. You would have to ask how they've come to that conclusion, but they won't tell you.
No.
But they have said, yes, there are UFOs. We've no proof that they're extraterrestrial, and they don't pose a threat to the UK. So, you know, but let's say, for example, I mean, I knew a lad many years back. He was convinced that there was going to be an announcement, so he went to the bookmaker, and he said, he put a lot of money on it, and I'm talking a lot of money.
Okay.
And he tried to claim it a couple of times, and they said, no, we would have to have official confirmation by someone like the United Nations or some similar body, or the US president, or our own prime minister, before we could pay you out. So I have often argued, let's assume that the UN or somebody that you would, you know, look up to make such an announcement did say, you know, we've made first contact. That is, you know, we've got an alien or we've made contact. However you want to, you know, assume that contact has been made. People have said, oh, there'll be panic. They go back to the Orson Welles broadcast about War of the Worlds back in the 30s on radio. Well, people allegedly were committing suicide. I don't think they were.
No.
But I said, well, let's assume, you know, I turn the news on tonight and it is first contact. I've still got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, life is still going to happen.
I still got to pay my mortgage. I still got to cut the grass. You know, life goes on. In general, it wouldn't really change anything, you know, unless they went on to say, but we're in deep do that because they're to kill us. Everybody run and hide, which would never happen. But if they just said we've made first contact, then life would go on. There'd be people who wouldn't believe it anyway, no matter who said it.
Yeah, of course.
And so there'd be arguments and discussions, but basically life would go on pretty much, in my opinion, pretty much as normal. So there was no reason why not to. For example, if we go way back to 1947, and we have the UFO crash at Roswell. Okay, up in early July 1947. The story goes, flying saucer crashed in the desert. It was recovered by the military with the bodies of the dead aliens. Maybe one was alive, maybe it just depends who you talk to. And they released it. They released a statement that appeared in the Roswell Daily Record, flying disc captured on Farmer's Ranch. Within hours, and I'm talking within hours, they said, oops, no, sorry, we made a mistake. It was a weather balloon. And the story died until the late 1970s when it resurrected itself.
Yeah, because there was quite a long period of time, and people don't often realise that's actually the case. There was almost like, it wasn't like, like you said, 1979 when that kind of popped back up again.
But the point is, they call this the cosmic Watergate. That within hours, the powers that be, including President Truman, had decided to put the lid on this and classify it and never reveal the truth. My question is, well, why? And I've asked all the main Roswell researchers this. I can't really get a consensus from them. This is technology from another world, which should be far in advance of ours, presumably. But yet within hours, we saw something so frightening that they immediately put the lid on it. And not only did they do it then, but they've kept the lid on it ever since. As far as they're concerned, it was a balloon. Project Mogul, they said later, but it's still a balloon. So what was it they could discover in those hours that would cause such consternation and still cause it to this very day? And I can't get a consensus from anyone as to what it would be or why they would do it. My argument is it would be the opposite. If you put yourself in the position of Truman, this is 1947, the Cold War is really hotting up.
Yeah, of course.
It really is. Everybody thinks we're going to go to war again at some point with the Russians, and it might be a nuclear war. Would it not be to your advantage, even if you didn't know what the hell it was, all you knew it was from somewhere else, to go public with it and say, look at us, we're America. The first contact with an alien species, they came to the US of A. Not to Russia, nowhere else, us. And wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Not only have we got our nukes, you better not mess with us because we don't know what these guys have left behind. Unfortunately, there was a malfunction and it crashed and they're all dead, but don't mess with us, So that's my phone that's going off. So, but they didn't. They put the lid on it, Kristian. So what was it that caused them to do that? I don't know. I think when you look at the era and the Cold War era at the time and the things that were happening, I think they would have done the opposite. They would have. I mean, especially with politicians. Even in modern times, I remember Tony Blair talking about he wanted to have his place in history. He probably thought by going to war and bombing the crap out of Iraq was his place in history. I'd have to disagree, but But politicians are, they have that mentality. If you think about the US president at the time, if he'd have announced that, they would be building statues to him and teaching it in high schools, and things of that nature. It would be never forgotten. He'd probably have a country named after him that they'd invaded at some point, So, but no, they put the lid on it then, Kristian, according to those that call it the Cosmic Watergate, and have kept it on right to this very day. What was it? What would scare them so much to do that? I don't know.
No, it's very true. What did they say? I guess it would run counter to. I guess America at the time would have been a very kind of it's like it's the nuclear family effectively. So there was you had stable family. You kind of had TV, I guess, was developing into the 50s and so on. Man, so what would it have been detrimental to the way of life in America that they didn't want to jeopardize?
This is something they would have had to have identified. This is the thing, Kristian, whatever it may be. Let's say we all agreed it was X. But we have to have identified X within hours. How could you identify anything within such a short period of time that's come from an extraterrestrial race from God knows where and how it got here? You know, all you might know is that this is from another planet. But there's something there that they did, because they said they released official press release with wreckage of a flying disc. Bits of it are going to up at higher headquarters, you know, for examination. I think it was about 8 hours later. It was, oops, no, sorry, it was a weather balloon, and it died. It was 5 minutes longer at the time. So it was in such a quick few hours, Kristian, that they realised what this is, you know. How would they be able to do that? This is alien technology, you know, presumably thousands of years in advance of us. But yet they were able to say, if you look at the film Hangar 18, you know, which is supposedly loosely based on Roswell, but it's updated. Sure. They actually had weeks or days to study the captured UFO. It crashed, but it was in one piece, and they shipped it to a hangar, and they got a guy in to study it. And slowly but surely, you know, it took them a while to get inside. Once they got inside, to find the dead occupants, and then there's all these, you know, glyphs on the walls they couldn't understand. But finally, they get to understand what these glyphs are. And it turned out that the aliens were our God. They had actually created us. They were coming back to have another look. And the government tried to bomb the building to shut them up. But when the building was blown to pieces, the UFO was still there. They couldn't destroy it. So, but that took them, I don't know if it was days or a week or whatever. But the real story at Roswell is the cover-up was put on within hours, you know, and hours. So, any of your listeners got any suggestions, any ideas?
That's a good point. So, that's a good point to ask a question. So, do you have any suggestions, any thoughts and theories that you can add your own to our little comments box below and to the discussion? So, I guess what comes next? I mean, I've heard stories in the press of recent days of stargates around the sun to multiple UFOs being seen in space by Soho, and you know, I don't think there's that much water to these stories. I don't think. Have you seen anything recently that's caught your eye?
Not seen anything recently that's caught my eye in that. More from what I've been doing myself. I mean, I think I mentioned that I'd republished the book UFO Contact of Pascagoula, and I felt vindicated because I tried to track down the one survivor, 2 witnesses, and his chap called Calvin Parker. And the incident, Pascagoula is in Mississippi. So I found a UFO group in Mississippi. I thought they were an obvious place to start. Do you know where Calvin Parker is? And they'd never even heard of it, you know, which astonished me. So I thought, well, there's a good reason for republishing the book. Cutting a long story short, I managed to finally track Calvin down, speak to him on the phone, and, you know, I know what him and Charles Hickson went through, but, you know, in the book, Charles Hickson talks about some other sightings he had afterwards. Oh, I thought, well, I wonder if the same kind of thing happened to Calvin Parker. And Calvin says, yes, I have more to tell. Other things happen. I don't know what yet, but other things happen. So I'm going to be finding out new information about an old case, which, you know, to me is just as valuable about getting, you know, new sightings and new information.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all part of the puzzle, Kristian.
So I guess
and he hasn't told me. I don't know what it is. He's just given me an indication there's more to come. So I'm looking forward to that.
So I guess that is quite a frequent experience, isn't it? Those who've seen an alien abduction, or so those who've experienced an alien abduction, those who've seen a craft of some kind, often find there's people who are also following it up, like a Men in Black counter, for instance, or they get people knocking at the door asking for more information, or black-eyed children apparently come into the door, and a strange phenomena happening after the event. as if they're trying to keep tabs on him in some regard. I mean, have you had anything like that come to your reports too?
I mean, black-eyed children are welcome here anytime you want to come and knock on my door. I'll take a photograph of them.
That's right. That's it.
I mean, I've watched a few. I mean, I'm not just disrespecting anybody's research, but a friend of mine is heavily into Bigfoot.
Yes.
We have long discussions about it, and I've watched a few documentaries, and I thought, well, America has got more guns than it has people. Why don't they just shoot one? And your argument's finished then, isn't it? Just kill it. Just put a bullet in it. These people go out in the woods, they're out hunting and fishing, and they see it, and they just stand there. No, shoot it, kill it. Bring it back, put it on the slab, end the story. But it doesn't happen. You know, so until that day does, I'm quite sceptical. But again, when we talk about all these other things, it's basically down to beliefs. I mean, I could ask my ex-wife when she saw this word Josh across this gentleman's forehead, what she believed it was. And she could say, I believe it was this, but because she believed it, it don't make it any real, does it?
No.
I could believe it's something entirely different. I mean, in the paranormal world, when you talk about sightings of ghosts, some people say the spirits of the dead. Some people say it's some kind of time recorder that's built into the stones of the building or the environment or whatever. There's all kinds of different, they're all based on belief at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Interpret the data in your own way. And, like Men in Black, I mean, I was on a radio show the other night and on about government officials calling here and saying, don't tell anybody. Well, I say, well, isn't it too late? He's already told his story. They missed the boat. He's already gone on the record. What is the point? In other words, there isn't one. Why would you tell somebody not to say anything when you've already said it? Doesn't make any sense. And I say, well, governments, have secrets. Well, yes, they do. It's part and parcel of government is to keep secrets.
That's right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they've got a secret of an alien in a fridge somewhere. But it is the very nature and origin of... I'll give you an example. A friend of mine worked in a textile mill, and he had to sign the Official Secrets Act. I said, what the hell for? You make cloth. He said, yeah, but some of the cloth that we make is used for military uniforms. So I have to sign the Official Secrets Act, and I can't tell you what that cloth's made of and how we make it. I said, was it any different to the other cloth you make? So I'm not allowed to tell you. But no, it isn't. But strictly speaking, it's a secret. Just because you keep a secret doesn't mean it's anything profound. So, but government. I mean, like for example, Manhattan Project. There was a reason for keeping that a secret. So you can read into it what you like. And somebody said, oh well, there's an alien base here. And I said, well, how do you know? Well, my friend's got a source that told him. I said, I've got a source. And they said, who is it? I said, it's called HP. Just to say you've got a source, mate, it means nothing. You've got to back it up. You really have. But, and I said, when it comes to bases of any kind of secret underground base, be it military or whatever, you have to ask one question. And he says, what? I said, who takes out the trash? I said, what do you mean? I said, it's called displacement. If you're going to build an underground base, you've got to dig it out.
That's
Where
right.
does all the dirt go? It's got to go somewhere, and it's usually on trucks that take it away. Somebody's going to see it, but nobody saw them building it. Isn't that amazing? Did they have a magic wand? Was it Harry Potter who went easy wizzy, let's get busy and just made it? No, come on, let's be real.
You actually hear about these mountains that get hollowed out, and you got like I said, there's underground bases. Someone would see the amount of displaced soil and material and rocks getting moved, and they'd have to be moved in a lot of volume to build a base of these significant sizes.
Food, where they get the electricity from, how the personnel get, but again, they just believe it, and there's nothing you can say, so don't waste your time.
Oh, they got a nuclear power base down there. Yeah, they still got waste.
Yeah, and I had one chap tell me, oh, this base opens up and it's like Tracy Island on Thunderbirds. I said, yeah, I bet it is. I bet it is, mate. Yeah. Hey, I'll go there on my holidays.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? But it's true. People, I guess, they'll follow their belief and will all stay steadfast to their belief until they're presented with something else, and even that, that isn't guaranteed to convince them otherwise.
When we remove all that, Kristian, when we remove all that, there is still a phenomenon there that's worthy of in my opinion, investigation. And I don't often do lectures now, but I did one at the end of last year, simply because an old mate of mine had told me that all these years I've been wasting my time. There was a lot of rubbish, and you've just been wasting your time. So it made me think. I thought, well, is he right? So I looked back on some of the things I've been involved with and some of the things I've done. Going back to my days at high school, no education. I mean, ufology really educated me in a whole different way. I've been around the world. I've met people, from all walks of life who I would never have met. I mean, I was born and raised in a small mining village, and your prospects when you left school were zero. You were expected to follow your father down the mine. My dad worked down the pit all his life, or go work in a factory or the mill. The mill's still going. I ended up in a factory, and I don't regret it, but I had an escape. My escape was UFO research, if you were lucky, you went to prison. And I had some of my mates that did exactly that. That was a little community that we lived in, but ufology took me out of that. So I've got a lot to be thankful of, but it also educated. So when we take away all those belief systems, there is still a phenomenon, like in the paranormal, Kristian. I have no doubt that people who investigate and research the paranormal are not wasting their time. There is something genuine there, because I've witnessed it firsthand myself. I'm not, a believer as such. So there is something there that is worthy of it, and we just don't know what it is yet. Now, whether ufology and the paranormal are related, as some people would suggest, maybe they are different sides of the same coin. For example, I don't know, but it's certainly not a waste of time, no matter what.
No, I mean what you mentioned there about are they two sides of the same coin? I was at the ASAT 30 conference, 2012, I think it was, and there was Paul Veer there and Neil Arnold, who are cryptozoologists, and I asked the question. I said, "Do you think it's fair that cryptozoology, which potentially is a biological entity, that gets slotted in with the paranormal and the unexplained, and that's the only platform that there is to talk about what is these cryptids and these characters that have come through our history, and that includes Bigfoot and so on, and Nessie, all those kind of usual things." And they were like, "No, because it's not unexplained. We just haven't found one yet. But it's a field of study that people are observing, that people appear to be experiencing, and we're just trying to find out what they are." And I said, that's our field. So yes, it is completely different to the unexplained, but it gets lumped in with the same group.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm one of those that many years back was a subscriber to the 14 Times, and they were having an expedition up the jungle somewhere. I don't know if it was to find whatever monster that lurked in the jungle, and I part-sponsored it. I only bought a T-shirt, but the proceeds of which went to the expedition. I don't think it got any further than actually landing wherever they did. I think they got all their equipment stolen as soon as they landed.
Oh man!
But nonetheless, I thought it was worthy of investing my little bit of money to try and help them. And we do know, for instance, that new species are discovered from time to time. We usually have a small nature, rather than a large hominid or some such thing. But again, you wouldn't necessarily rule it out completely.
Well, yeah, that just like quite recently, they never thought the red panda existed, and they actually found one in like 2005.
So I think again, wipe away all the nonsense, about Bigfoot being a pet of an alien and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some people do say it.
They do.
Wipe away all the nonsense. There is something that is worthy of study and worth investing your time and your own money in, because we do know that creatures that are previously unknown to science do appear. So it is not beyond the realms of possibility, for example, that the Tasmanian tiger might still exist. It's supposed to have died out. I don't know if it's the early part of the 20th century or whenever.
Yeah.
But Australia being such a large country, it's not impossible. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. And there are sightings of it that are worthy of further study.
That's correct, yeah, that's correct.
The paranormal, which I think is separate to cryptozoology, it's a good point you made. And ufology, I don't know whether it is separate or not. You can argue about that, but I still think it's worthy of further study.
Absolutely.
As simple as that.
Well, Phil, you know what? We've been going for about 2 hours now. You know, it's like I've just seen the clock, and it's like it's quarter to four.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got to cook my wife's dinner. She's coming home from work. What I will say is, anybody who's interested in any of the stuff we've talked about, have a look at Flying Disc Press and some of the books. I'm self-funded. I don't have any money behind me. You know, it's all my own work. So I'd appreciate the support. If anybody's got any ideas about ways we can approach someone or an institution to archive our material, love to hear from them. Really would. I think it's becoming more and more about, you know, something that we should consider, because people like me and my colleagues, we're not going to be around forever, and it's our generation that had the paper files. I think, you know, your generation, not so much, and certainly the next generation, there won't be any, I don't think. So I think it's vital we store this information, have it publicly accessible. And, you know, if anybody wants to discuss a sighting or experience, again, please do get in touch. Whilst I write about the phenomena, I still investigate it the best I can. Not just here, but anywhere, really. I'll have a go.
You know, I feel like that sounds absolutely wonderful. You've covered everything I could have said as an ending here today, so I would like to thank you for your time today, and I will allow you to jump away and get your wife's tea before she gets very mad at you.
Well, you know, I've got some nice sweet and sour chicken, Kristian. If you're passing in a couple of hours, you're more than welcome to join us.
Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely. I'd love some.
And thank you for your time, mate. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. Right, there we go. That goes Phil today. Thank you. Thank you to Phil, and check out Flying Disc Press and the books and the publications they are putting out. There's a lot of valuable information there, and get in contact with Phil in regards to his suggestions, so please do so, and we'll leave all the details in the show notes below. So Phil, I'll let you jump off, matey, and I shall see you soon, okay?
Bye-bye now.
Alright, take care. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Please feel free to head over to our Facebook page. You just search up Our Curious Worlds on Facebook. You can head over to my website, christianlander.com. You can follow me on Twitter at DefineChristian. And of course on YouTube it is youtube.com/ChristianLander, or just search out Our Curious Worlds on YouTube.